Right. So first, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Nora Negrin. I'm Anthony's mom.
Hi, my name is Tatiana Machado, and I am Anthony's other mom.
I'm Mariah O'Neill, and I'm Anthony's sister.
So I'm going to ask you some basic questions about tuberculosis disease. It's totally all right if you're unsure of an answer, just give it your best guess.
Sounds good.
What is tuberculosis?
A really bad disease that has something to do with your blood, maybe your lungs.
It's a bad disease. Tuberculosis has to do with the lungs.
Okay.
And it's very contagious, and it was been eliminated. You get a vaccine for it. People don't get that anymore, or I think.
It's an infectious disease that attacks the lungs.
Are you vaccinated against it?
I think so because when I did all my American paperwork to become a citizen, they test you for it, and it came back negative. So I'm assuming.
Awesome.
Yeah. I think so.
Yes.
And where were you born?
In Cuba.
I was born in Venezuela.
Rochester, New York.
Where in the world is tuberculosis a problem?
I would assume developing regions that have less access to medical care.
Well, I'm not sure, but I think that the less developed countries would probably third world countries that don't have access to vaccines, I would think. I think here in the United States, I don't hear about it, so I like to say that we're okay.
I know that we had a flare not too long ago. I thought it was eradicated because of the vaccine, but I don't know. I think that is a worldwide issue.
Where was the flare?
The year?
Or where?
Oh, I'm not sure about.
Where would you rank tuberculosis on a scale of 1 to 10 for global impact? 10 being it is most impactful and should be top of mind for everyone. 1 being it is largely irrelevant.
Well, it is pretty important. Eradicated, and a bunch of people died back in the day. I would say it is around a good 7.
3.
Well, the times that we're living in with coronavirus being the top thing, and you don't hear much about that, I would personally give it a 2.
Have you heard of any issues in the world of tuberculosis treatment?
No. I just heard that people that have had it in the past, long time ago, like in Cuba, they put them in a hospital, separated from their family, and that was the cure of all.
No, I'm not.
No, I'm not aware of any issues, but I'm assuming that there are some.
That's all. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so thank you to the 3 of you for all taking the time to interview with me. I really appreciate it. And now I'm just gonna basically give you a brief rundown of tuberculosis related to the questions I was just asking you. So tuberculosis, it's a infectious pulmonary or related to the lungs disease that is very deadly if left untreated, but fortunately there are treatments available for it in the form of antibiotics that are generally very effective when used appropriately. It's caused by a bacterium known as Mycobacterium tuberculosis, and it is today highly relevant in parts of the developing world, namely Africa, where there's also a major HIV issue, as well as South Asia, and to a certain extent Latin America and parts of the former Soviet Republic. And there is technically a vaccine for tuberculosis known as BCG, Bacille Comet Guerin, and it is a variably effective vaccine. It only works.
What is that?
So it only works about 20% of the time, on
Oh.
average. So that means even if you receive the vaccine, it's not a vaccine in the way that you
That's
think
why
of
they
like
test you
exactly
so much. Yeah.
in the way that we think of like maybe hepatitis A or like typhoid or something,
Right.
and that just because
Right.
you receive the vaccine, even you can still contract the disease. And this vaccine is only pretty much given in areas with high risk of contracting tuberculosis. So generally in the U.S. and Europe, you don't receive the vaccine, but in a lot of Latin American countries, you would
Cute.
indeed receive the
see,
vaccine.
oh my God.
And it again is still a problem in many parts of the world, and is actually the single most deadly infectious agent in the world in terms of numbers of deaths. It kills more people every year than HIV.
Oh my God. They
Yeah.
need to. This is shocking.
Wow, wait, does that mean it's like the most deadly, or just the most people are infected with it coupled with the highest number of deaths in relation to how many people are infected?
Not that it's necessarily the most deadly. For example, like Ebola virus has a
I
much
was-
higher fatality rate.
That's right where I was headed.
But tuberculosis is it's a combination of infectiousness and fatality, like similar to coronavirus, that makes it a lethal disease.
A perfect storm of nasty.
That allows it to be as infectious as it is. And as I said before, so there are treatments available for tuberculosis, antibiotics, and treatments can take over 6 months to complete. And the issue with that is that it can be hard to have a patient reliably take a medication for 6 months straight. And with the misuse of antibiotics, you always run the risk of a bacterium developing antibiotic resistance, which we've noticed in tuberculosis. So there has been a resurgence or an increase in a number of areas of antibiotic resistant tuberculosis strains that don't respond to our commonly given antibiotics, which
We don't have cases in the United States, right?
there are some cases of tuberculosis in the United States, including drug-resistant strains, but generally they come from abroad. It's very uncommon for tuberculosis to spread within the U.S. And so it's beginning to be asked by medical professionals like what this like post-antibiotic world could look like, specifically for diseases that formerly were lethal, like tuberculosis, that now are pretty benign once you receive treatment. Not even benign because the treatments and the disease can be very like uncomfortable, but you're very unlikely to die from it in a developed nation today. But in 10, 20 years could once again be deadly because the fact that we are running out of treatment options.
Are we working on a vaccine?
So yeah, there are a lot of studies looking at vaccines. There are a number in like clinical trials, but as of right now, the vaccine we have was made in like the 1920s, and
Wow.
there's been no progress since.
No.
Where does it like come from? Like rats, black plague, well, fleas, but you know.
So actually, the bacterium, its reservoir, the place that it lives, is actually humans. So in the way that like coronavirus comes from bats, tuberculosis comes from humans.
How does it get activated?
So that's actually a good question because it's estimated that around 1/3, about 2 billion people in the world, are infected with tuberculosis, but latently, meaning they have subclinical infections and they don't present any symptoms. And that only about 5% of people will present to a symptomatic stage.
This is crazy. You're blowing my mind.
Wait,
and-
so if you're near someone who's like super deathly ill with tuberculosis, and
You're gonna get it.
but you're one of those people that's like they don't display symptoms, are you gonna not display symptoms because you already have it in your system, or they have some way more lethal version of it, and now you're gonna be in trouble?
It's possible that like you could receive an additional like bacterial
Viral
load
Okay.
of like the pathogen, and then it might get to a point that it's able to like surpass your immune system's barrier. But the main issue there is if you ever become immunocompromised from like an autoimmune disorder or a second disease like HIV, or you experience a period of malnutrition, or basically anything that renders your immune system vulnerable could trigger you to progress to a clinically presenting stage of tuberculosis in which you're actually showing symptoms. Which is why they actually have like the tests when you enter a new country
So that means
to see
Oh.
if you have it, because you can
Is
have
that the-
tuberculosis even if you've been vaccinated and also not know it because of the fact that latent subclinical infections are so prevalent.
Wow. That's crazy.
that is wow.
Is that the test where they put the thing under your skin and if it's a bump, that means you got
Yeah, a
it?
big bump.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
they
that
measure it.
test is called it's like tuberculin PPD something, and basically they inject you with a cocktail of tuberculosis antigens, which is basically just like these biological like molecules that are specific to the tuberculosis bacterium. And once it injects into your skin, if your body is able to produce antibodies to respond to those antigens, then that means you've been exposed to tuberculosis before. And it's possible that you could be a carrier of tuberculosis or that you once had it and you've cleared it out of your system.
And then the second step after that, I think they take an X-ray of your lungs.
If you get a positive
Yeah.
for that test, if the bump
Yes.
appears,
Yes.
because that means you sent a bunch of antibodies to the site of injection, then they will do an X-ray of your lungs to see if they can like detect
See
any
any-
lesions or
Yes.
anything else that would indicate tuberculosis infection. And if you get a positive for the skin test and also a positive for the X-ray, then you'll be barred entry for a lot of countries.
Yeah. It is very important here. It's the only thing that they test you when you do immigration paperwork.
Wow.
I had no idea that we just have it. You could just, it's a human thing.
Once you've had tuberculosis, can you get it again?
With that and with like any number of diseases, it's like very unlikely for you to get it again, but it is possible because for tuberculosis, the bacterium that causes the vast majority of cases in the world is a bacterium known as Mycobacterium tuberculosis, but there are also other bacteria that also cause infections that are also known as tuberculosis. That are related to Mycobacterium tuberculosis, but those are like Mycobacterium bovis, Mycobacterium africanum, that live in specific regions of the world that are technically a different pathogen, and so technically could invade your body and also cause infection because they have like different antigens.
So what
But
you're
then
saying,
again, they're related, so your body would still be at least somewhat prepared for it.
Dang.
So if you get it, how lethal it is and how fast you start showing symptoms.
There's a lot of variation with that, so it depends on like how quickly it's diagnosed, like the kind of treatment you receive, how effectively you're taking the treatment. But like countries like Peru, for example, which many people consider to be a developing nation, over like 90% like cure rates for tuberculosis. So when given appropriate treatment, it's pretty much easy to cure. I mean, I'm hesitant to say easy because the treatment regimens are so long, but it is very much so a disease that you can beat with the appropriate medical care.
and you can still be with your family group. You don't have to be isolated
It
during
is
the
still
treatment.
infectious. They would isolate you for the course of treatment, or recommend that you're isolated.
Mm.